I have a confession to make, everyone. This is going to be the hardest thing I will ever confess. I may lose some fans, but I have to get this off my chest. Okay, I'm ready. I don't care about the PeopleMover. I don't care about the PeopleMover. Yeah, go ahead, get it all out, yell at me in the comments, throw those metaphorical tomatoes. It still doesn't change the fact that I think it's an over-glorified prototype Omnimover attraction. Yes, I know it's an important part of Disneyland history. Sure, the vehicles themselves looked cool, and that Tron tunnel that they had in the 80s looked pretty sick, I'm not gonna lie. But that's it! There's nothing else to it. What is the hype even all about? I don't know, maybe because I have no real memories of it being there, that's why I'm a little more critical about it. Who knows? But do you know what I do have real memories of? Rocket rods! Disneyland's faster and supposedly more thrilling upgrade to the PeopleMover. For others, it was a constantly broken mess made only to make Tomorrowland 1998 more thrilling than it actually was. But for me, it was the first thrill ride I remember getting excited about. I remember walking through the long, winding queue and climbing up the stairs to the top of the loading platform, ready to zoom on a rocket through Tomorrowland. And zoom I did, until it closed permanently in 2001, leaving nothing but my broken heart and a broken track. So, what exactly went wrong? Usually thrill rides at any Disney park become some sort of staple attraction, but Rocket Rods only lasted 2 years before closing forever. How do you mess up a thrill ride this bad? More importantly, how do you mess up a successor to a beloved attraction? Well, let's strap in and take a look at the troubled, tragic history of Rocket Rods. I'd add a rise and fall in the title, but it doesn't really make grammatical sense, so. You know, I'm gonna go wipe this off. Here's the title sequence. So, for the sake of history and possible hints as to why Rocket Rods was the way it was, I'm going to briefly talk about the history of the PeopleMover. No, the irony of me talking smack about it earlier isn't lost on me, just roll with it. Opening on July 2nd, 1967, with the rest of the first new Tomorrowland overhaul, the PeopleMover was a moving ride through Tomorrowland and its attractions. Guests boarded the attraction at an elevated platform just beneath the rocket jets and took a slow-moving tour of Tomorrowland. The tracks slowly winded through the adventures through Inner Space Building and the Carousel Theater before meandering above the Autopias and the Submarine Lagoon, where it then entered the Circle-Rama Building Theater and made its slow return to the station. Did I mention this ride was slow? Though I have to admit, even if I think it's highly overrated, there are many reasons why people still love it nearly 28 years after its closure. It gave you beautiful views of the lagoon that not even the Skyway, monorail, or any Autopia could show. It was one of the last things Walt Disney gave somewhat of a touch on before his death the year prior. And for the people of the late 60s, it was an exciting glimpse into the future of public transit. That exciting new vision of the future never came, shocker, and by the early 90s, it was as dated as most of Tomorrowland was. Speaking of Tomorrowland, Imagineering at the time was frustrated with having to update the whole land a third time. So for the sake of not wanting to go through another overhaul in 20 to 30 years, Imagineers had to answer the question, how do you make tomorrow timeless? Plan A was to turn it into a crystal-fueled intergalactic fantasy spaceport, complete with a prototype of alien encounter, an animatronic alien music show in the Carousel Theater, and a magic light parade as seen in the concept art for Tomorrowland 2055. Unfortunately, the lack of money from Euro Disneyland's failure soon caught up to them, so not only was the project cancelled, but the budget for any future projects was slashed. So Imagineers had to go with Plan B, which was to close a couple of attractions, replace them and any empty spaces with scraps from Discoveryland in Disneyland Paris and Future World in Epcot, and make a new thrill ride. One of the attractions on the chopping block for this update was the beloved PeopleMover, which moved its last people on August 21st, 1995. But what was to become of the infrastructure and tracks? The answer came when the Plan B New Tomorrowland plans were announced to the public in early 1996. This New Tomorrowland would replace Captain EO with Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, put a version of Innoventions in the empty Carousel Theater, and feature a brand new thrill ride on the PeopleMover tracks called the Rocket Sled. Thankfully, someone else thought that name was terrible too, and Rocket Sled was changed to Rocket Rods. Which arguably isn't that great of a name either. It kind of makes me think of a futuristic Magic Mike Club, but I'll gladly take a weird innuendo over blandness any day of the week. Construction on Rocket Rods began in 1997 and right off the bat hit a problem.
Money.
The budget for Rocket Rods was $25 million, a whole quarter of the budget for Tomorrowland's makeover. But that $25 million wasn't enough to cover both making the new stuff and renovating the old track. So Disney went to General Motors asking for a sponsorship to get more money. After all, a corporate sponsorship worked for a lot of other attractions in the past, and General Motors was currently sponsoring the upcoming Epcot attraction Test Track. Surely they would say yes to giving Rocket Rods a little bit of money, right? Due to construction delays on Epcot's Test Track, General Motors said no to sponsoring Rocket Rods. And because of the financial disaster known as Euro Disneyland, other companies were reluctant to give Disney any sort of theme park money. So with an unmovable budget and no corporate sponsor, the decision was made to cut corners by keeping the tracks pretty much the same and scaling down on the queue pre-show. Tight budget, cutting corners, mid to late 90s. I wonder who was in charge of Disneyland at the time. Oh god damn it, it's you again! But even with a tight budget and no sponsor, construction on this new thrill ride went relatively smooth. And on May 22nd, 1998, Rocket Rods and the rest of the renovated Tomorrowland were open to the public in a ceremony hosted by the then president of the Disneyland Resort, Paul Pressler. Guests flocked to the entrance of the old Circle Vision Theater, now repurposed as the queue for Rocket Rods, to see the supposed new take on the tomorrow of transport. And how did the public react to this brand new vision of tomorrow? Well, let's take a ride first to understand what was going on. Before even riding the ride, you had to wind around its massive indoor queue, starting at the former entrance to the Circle Vision Theater. The first room you were led into contained blueprints of various Tomorrowland ride vehicles, as well as actual former Tomorrowland ride vehicles repainted in a weird grid pattern. A hot PeopleMover car. A movie screen in that room would play a couple of old cartoons about the future of transport on a loop, which would get really annoying if the wait was super long, which it often was. The next room was in the old Circle Vision Theater itself, with its screens now playing 3 films about crazy cars, the history of modern transportation, including the hyping up of the future of transportation with the Rocket Rod, ha 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 ha, and sped up versions of the old Circle Vision shows. Dang, the budget was tight, but I didn't think it was put that old attraction back where it came from or so help me tight. You know? It's like if they started playing Ellen's Universe of Energy in the queue for Cosmic Rewind. Like, That would be weird, right? After those other short video portions, you were led into a dark tunnel under Tomorrowland that had pictures of proposal plans of expansion for the rocket rod system, going to places like John Wayne Airport and California Adventure. Way to sneakily advertise that barely under construction new park there, Disney. Anyway, you climb up a bunch of stairs and boom! You're at the loading platform ready to finally ride the ride. You got buckled into a weirdly configured rocket rod, and your rocket moved to a traffic light. Once the light turned green, the rocket popped a wheelie and accelerated to 35 miles per hour across the track, only to immediately screech to a near halt to turn into the Star Tours building. But don't worry, you immediately started speeding up again once you completed that turn. And from there, you sped around the old PeopleMover track, occasionally slowing down to a crawl to take a turn, but overall zooming above Tomorrowland, barely able to take in any of the scenery around you until you slowed down for the final time coming into the Rocket Rod's queue building. There was a flash of light and a blast of air as your rocket exited the building and went back to the loading platform. And that was Rocket Rods. Okay, I'm aware that there are issues with this ride. I'm not completely blinded by nostalgia. So remember how I was saying that the PeopleMover was a slow ride? That wasn't a knock against it. That was just stating what it was, a slow ride. When you put a big, heavy thrill ride on the same exact track as a smaller, lighter, slow ride, you are going to have a broken mess! Because nothing was done to make the tracks capable of handling a bigger, faster ride, not even the bare minimum of making the turns. The constant braking and speeding of the heavy rockets caused a lot of damage to the track. Even the rockets couldn't take the constant speeding and braking. The tires wore down fast, which would also damage the engine from the wear and tear. Combined with a temperamental computer system that would shut the ride down at any slight mispositioning of the rockets, this meant that the ride was constantly breaking down and out of commission, possibly breaking the record of breakdowns set by Indiana Jones. It got so bad that literally over a month after its opening, it went down for a 3-month refurbishment that was supposed to last 5 weeks. 3 months! In the first year! And even when it was working, because it opened before the debut of the Fast Pass, and because of the way the seating was configured and the loading area was configured, you'd be stuck in line for up to 3 hours just to ride it. They had to debut the single rider line on this ride to try and cut down on wait times. And while most of the line was thankfully in air conditioning, the lack of variety in the pre-show videos and mostly boring dark corridors led to a mentally exhausting wait for what resulted in a fairly mediocre ride for most guests. So with all these issues, it's a wonder it survived as long as it did. But it was becoming clear to everyone that Rocket Rods, like the rest of New Tomorrowland, was simply not working. Even after reopening in October 1998, after the long, unexpected refurbishment, it was still causing problems for both guests and cast members alike. At some point, the wheelie effect at the very beginning was turned off, and then, on September 25th, 2000, Rocket Rods closed for what was supposed to be an even longer refurbishment, set to open the spring of 2001. No signs of work were ever seen during this time, and on April 27th, 2001, then President of Disneyland Cynthia Harris broke the news that Rocket Rods was permanently closed. It barely survived 2 years, and everything, aside from 2 rockets, was scrapped. But even if this new tomorrow of transport was a fluke, there was a chance of a better version on the horizon. When Harris broke the news, she also said, "We look forward to putting our heads together with our Imagineering partners to create and deliver an outstanding attraction to our guests at this location at some point in the future." Maybe this meant an upgrade of the PeopleMover, or a better thrill ride. Hope was in the air for a better tomorrow, so let's see what came of it. Nothing. Okay, that's technically not true, but it certainly feels like it sometimes. After its permanent closure, the Q building lay dormant for a couple years until Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters opened in its place March 17, 2005, where it continues to run to this day. It's definitely cuter and more operational than its predecessor, but is it a true replacement? I mean, sure, since the Q space is being used as an actual attraction space again, but what about the actual ride? What's been done with the tracks and the loading platform? Yeah. Because of how heavy the rockets were, combined with the constant speeding and braking, the tracks became permanently damaged, possibly to the point of being unfixable. But for one reason or another, perhaps because of money or memories or a small hope of something new, they sit practically abandoned. Sure, every now and then they'll have some sort of event to put characters on top of the tracks, and more recently there have been rumors circulating of a return to the PeopleMover, with management being seen walking the tracks last summer. But rumors are rumors, and as of this recording, there still hasn't been anything said or done officially to the tracks. And so they sit, a haunting reminder of past optimism and budget cuts. If you were to ask the question, was Rocket Rods worth it? The popular consensus would be no. And I understand why, what with it replacing a beloved attraction and being a broken mess almost dead on arrival. But if you were to ask me that same question, I would say yes. This was my first and favorite Big Kid ride. In fact, my first favorite ride ever. I loved how bumpy it was, and I loved walking through that long underground tunnel to get on. It wasn't completely in the dark, and there wasn't any scary loud music, no grim grinning ghosts or anything. I loved getting that different perspective of Star Tours and Space Mountain, even if it was more of a blur. It was a ride I wanted to go on again and again and again. It was the stepping stone to a world of faster thrills. When it closed for good, I remember being confused and sad. My favorite ride just gone. Almost everything about it scrapped. I understand now that it was ultimately for the best, but it's still sad it wasn't given the chance it really deserved from the very beginning. Maybe the future will be kinder to this weird little ride. Perhaps it'll even revive it and make it better than ever. But until that day, Rocket Rods will be remembered as one of the few failed attractions at Disneyland, a constant reminder of budget cuts and cheapness. Thank you so much for watching this video about the history of Rocket Rods. If you like this look into theme park history and want to see more, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for notifications of when I post. For more information on upcoming videos, or if you want to hear my opinions and musings on other things, you can follow me on Twitter at ghoulish_gabs. I know, Twitter is still a thing, isn't that weird? But in the case it still isn't a thing, I also have a link tree that you can go and find other socials under there. Link to that link tree is in the description. I even have a Discord server you can join. Link to that is in the description as well. Of course, if you're feeling especially generous, you can donate to my Ko-Fi at ko-fi.com/ghoulishgabs for $2 and have your name shouted out at the end of my videos, such as past contributors Rob Bergman, Nor, and Bennett the Lard. Thank you again to all of my followers across the web, and until next video, stay safe, wear a seatbelt, don't do drugs, and remember to bank your damn tracks! That is, if you're building a fast ride anyway. Okay, bye!
It's a new ride, Karen. There are bound to be one or two things that are gonna be ironed out.